here we go. Corvette Build Series episode 5. This is going to be engine install and dry sump plumbing, basically engine bay fitment kind of stuff. I need to order my dry sump fittings on Monday, so we're here over the weekend. We're gonna get the entire driveline in the car this weekend. I've got the subframes pulled out already. I did that last night after I got back. I picked up my new engine from Emerald Coast Performance and Machine. Big thank you to them. Rush job as it is already, but Jacob he always does an amazing job for me. He did our engine package last year. He also did the one in my S14. This one is 418 cubic inch. It's 13.5 to 1. It's an LS3. It's got ported and polished heads. Pretty much all the bells and whistles. It has Johnson short travel link bar lifters in it. It's got ARP main studs, ARP head studs, pretty much everything ARP that you can put in an LS. It has everything. It's also the first engine I've ever done that's dry sumped. So that'll be kind of cool. I have an AVA dry sump system for the car. We'll get that mounted up today. I finally get to put my brand new action clutch on. I've had this thing sitting on the shelf for like 4 months, just waiting until I get ready to put the car back together. Be the first time I've ever ran an unsprung hub, but we are trying to make a lot of power with this car. Not all the time. For the rental, we're probably gonna try and make about 750 on nitrous, but I do plan on taking it to LS Fest and putting some like reps and sponsors and partners of ours in the car. So might turn it up, see if the engine is rated for a lot. So I might try and break 1,000 with it just for kicks on the dyno to see if it'll do it, if Freddie's okay with it, but that's up to him. So I have some custom Rickwell's engine and trans mounts for it. New starter for it. This thing right here, this beautiful Holley high ram for it that my friend Zach Terrell from Major League Coatings did for me. I basically handed him the intake, threw like 30 ideas at him, and I was like, just make it what you want. It's the centerpiece of the car. It's coming out the hood. I wanted him to design something that he would be proud of, kind of showed off what he does. And we've been using them for our powder coating for probably the past 3 or 4 years now, and I'm so excited about how the high rim came out. It looks so good. It fits the Freedom Factory vibe that we're doing, like, moving to the Freedom Factory. It fits that perfectly. So, and it fits the Corvette, old school, well, not old school, but American muscle car. So next step, we'll pretty much start assembling everything. We'll get the motor and trans mounts and everything out. I still have to get all the parts out of my engine, or from my engine, off the shelf, but we're gonna get this up on the engine stand, get the dry sump and stuff put on it, get everything mounted back to the subframes right here, and then we'll get it up here in the car. All right, guys, so it's been a few hours. As you can see, I have the engine, the torque tube, the trans and diff back on the subframes, about ready to go in the car. I ran into several problems, which I didn't expect, but I kind of did, because when you're doing a build like this, you kind of always run into problems, even if you're taking one driveline out and putting basically the same driveline back in. With all new parts, some of them aren't made to work together, and you kind of have to adapt and make them work together. So first thing, I had an issue with my Rickwell's diff mounts. They did not clear the ECS trans brace, so I had to slightly just notch the trans brace. No big deal. It took a few minutes. I had an issue with the pilot bearing not fitting on my input shaft. I thought I had the wrong one, so I went to the parts store and got a different one. Turns out my input shaft was just slightly, I don't want to say warped, but just, it's kind of like mushroomed a little bit, so I had to smooth that out to get the pilot bearing to fit smoothly. Engine mounts didn't clear my dry sump, so I had to clearance the engine mount just right there in the corner to get to clear the dry sump fittings. And then my dry sump pump didn't clear the stock motor mount at all, even though this is supposed to be a bolt-on kit for a Corvette. I realized pretty quickly this is not actually a direct bolt-on for a C6 Corvette, because I did not get their like LS7 basically Z06 replacement dry sump kit. This is an LSC kit from Aviade, which is basically meant to put the dry sump pump in the stock AC compressor location, but it is not for a specific chassis per se. So I've had to do a little bit of modification there. As you can see, I pretty much had to cut out the entire motor mount, clearance it. I had to shave it down right here to clear the back of the pump. So that was mostly just to give myself some clearance. I need to look up the instructions, because I left them at Jacob's, who's my engine builder's place, but I think I actually mounted the dry sump pump incorrectly. But I have to wait till Monday to go pick up the instructions because they're not on the website. But the dry sump belt's really, really loose. I don't think it should be that loose, so I don't know if you're supposed to space the pump or I just did something in the improper order, but there's no tensioner, so yeah, there's that one. I think that's it. I think that's the only problems I've had so far. They just took a hot minute to kind of get everything situated. Right now I'm trying to lay out the dry sump, basically the lines up to from the pan to the pump and pump to the tanks. It's kind of frustrating actually. It seems to be all different AN sizes, and I don't know if that's because of the way they just do their kit and they just want you to buy more fittings or what the case is, but my feeds from the pan are -10s and they go into the bottom of the pump. On the bottom of the pump are all -12s. It's all -12s coming out of the pump too. Which the -12s to the tank, no big deal, but so I have to buy fittings for the bottom of the pump to go from the 10s out of there to the 12s out of there, and I have to buy a 10 to come out of here to go into the other side of the oil pan, because this right here is a -10 and that's the oil pressure feed for the engine. So I don't know, I'm really confused by that. I don't know why when they send you the kit they wouldn't just go, oh, the pan fittings are -10, let me put -10s in the pump. Oh, the pressure out fitting or the pressure in fitting for the oil system is a -10, let me put a -10 coming out of the pump for that line. So now I'm going to try and take some of the fittings off the breather tank, or not the breather tank, the oil tank, and see if I can get 10 to 10, and then I'll do 12 to 12. So I don't know, we're gonna take a bit of a break. I'm gonna go to the gas station, get some coffee. I want to put the driveline actually in the car tonight, just so I can like double check the fittings and everything. But I'm actually gonna go get on my tablet, drop a diagram of how the dry sump's supposed to be, and kind of label all the fittings with what they currently are and then what they should be, so that I can kind of wrap my head around it. Because right now I'm trying to do it all in my head, and there's like 20 fittings and all kinds of different AN sizes. So I'm gonna go break it down, try and make it a little easier, and basically just take every fittings out of the whole system and order all new fittings to make it easy for myself. So I'll put a diagram of what I come up with right here, and then we'll catch up with you guys when I get the engine and everything in the car. I wasn't gonna film a clip till I got further along, but this is the happiest I've been with this car since we started the teardown. Like, I was so concerned that I wouldn't get the motor back in time or something was gonna happen. The motor wouldn't be able to get in the car. There was no way to make it to round one. And biggest milestone so far, the driveline is in the car in its entirety. I gotta tighten down some bolts still, but the subframe bolts are tightened down. Front and rear. Nothing's holding the subframes in but the bolts. There's no jacks, no nothing. Like, this is the best moment so far. We've got everything back in the car. We can actually start making some serious progress now. I can start doing plumbing and ordering the fittings and stuff I need. That was my other biggest concern, is Vibrant's been kind of iffy right now about having fittings on the shelf with all this, you know, nonsense about not being able to get supplies and stuff. And the dry sump system's gonna need a lot of different fittings now. So yeah, we're going to start figuring out what dry sump lines I need. I put a diagram hopefully in earlier in this video to show kind of what I was looking at and what I thought I needed. So we're gonna double check that, get that ready to go, get some fittings coming, and just keep on rolling. Okay, this seems like a pretty good stopping point for day one. It's about 9:30, kind of hungry, a little tired, and it's Saturday, so I'm gonna go home a little early tonight. I did get a lot of little things buttoned up. I got the stock fuel lines out of the car because for some reason I forgot to take them out when I stripped the car. I got the rear brake lines back into place. Basically I put all the hard lines back in the car. And biggest thing, I got the intake fitted. So my motor mounts are, my motor and diff mounts, the Rick Wells ones that I bought, allow you to kind of move the engine forward and back about 1.5 to 2 inches, so you can kind of play with placement. So I pushed it all the way back as far as it would go, just to try and get some clearance for the balancer, which turns out I needed to put on before I put the engine in the car. So I'm either going to pull the power steering rack, which is what I'm probably going to do, or pull the engine back out. Probably just going to pull the rack tomorrow. But I slid it all the way back. I didn't realize how much you had to trim the firewall when you put the high rim in. So factory, there's like a lip that comes out like this far. I had to cut the whole, I cut the lip off the whole thing because I just thought it looked better, and I've had to trim out pretty much the majority of the firewall. So if you look, basically put the cowl back on it where it should be, which is about right there. You can see about what I've had to trim out. So I'm still gonna have to trim the cowl a good bit too, but thought it'd be good just to go ahead and do it. If I would have known, I would have just cut it out when I had everything out, but I didn't think about it. I didn't really realize how far back Corvette engines sit in the car, so you gotta put the high rim on it. So, but it looks like it's gonna be just poking through the hood. My hope is to have it kind of like Dirk's car, because I have the same hood vent kit where the high rim basically is just the lid barely comes through the hood. So all you'll see is like the stars and stripes and the Holley EFI symbol. And then I'll have my nitrous outlet stuff right here that'll come out the hood, and then just track spec hood vents covering that. So all you'll see is the lid and then the nitrous solenoids, which I think will be pretty cool. Obviously I got all the suspension. I didn't put the FDF fab on it yet. But I got all the stock stuff back on just to make it a roller, because the car is gonna go to Full Lock Automotive across town to get the firewall built by Ernest, which I think will be next week. I think. He's just waiting on Reese's car to go to powder coat, so I wanted it to be a roller in case he called me and was like, hey, I can do the car like tomorrow, because it's gonna be one of those jobs where I drop it off, pick it up same day probably. So I want it to be ready to go when I get the phone calls, so I don't have to delay them and they don't have to delay me and a whole bunch of other mess. So that's pretty much gonna wrap it up for tonight. We'll pick this back up tomorrow, where I'm gonna pull the power steering rack out and basically start plumbing, wiring, and taking everything on that shelf and putting it on the car, because I wanna empty that shelf as fast as possible. So we'll see you guys in the morning. All right, so we actually got a lot done today. I got the entire dry sump system planned out. I got the fuel system planned out. I got a bunch more parts installed on the car. So the regulator's now mounted where it's gonna be. The oil filter's located where it's gonna be. I had to stick the radiator in and the water pump, which is now over there, just to kind of make sure that the like the oil filter was going to clear, and a couple other things. So I did get the dry sump stuff sorted, and well, here, I'll just show you guys. So I've had my laptop up all day, and I'll put a better version of these diagrams in this video somewhere, but this is my dry sump layout and all the fittings that I will need. This is all the fuel system fittings I need, list of fittings I already have. So turns out I had majority of the fittings I actually needed here already, and the line. I didn't realize how many fittings and lines I had in my box. This is all stuff that's left over from when I either had the RB or the LS in my S14. Mostly the RB. I bought a boatload of fittings and lines when I did the RB, because I had lines going all over the place in that thing. It turns out I had a lot of them left, so I actually have the fuel rail fittings I need for the Holley rails here. They're -8 ORB, 3 of them are to -8, one's to -6. But this particular one right here, I'm actually, I had reached out to Ernest, and he had a great idea, because I was going to run a deadheaded fuel system in this car because of this, because I didn't want to cut into the firewall anymore. He made a good point. They make Banjo ORB to dash whatever, in this case it'll be to -6 AN fittings. So I'm going to get one of those for the back of the rail here, so I can run a full return style system. For you guys that don't know the difference, a return style system means there's a feed line that comes from the fuel cell all the way up to the fuel rails to a regulator. Regulator goes all the way back to the fuel cell, so it's like a continuous loop. It tends to keep the cool a little bit fueler. A deadheaded system would basically be, you would mount the regulator, yeah, pretty much wherever, probably right here on my fuel cell. It would go feed out to the regulator, other side of the regulator to the fuel rails, bottom port on the regulator to the return. And basically when you turn the fuel pumps on and it hits your desired fuel pressure, in which case this would be like 60 PSI for me, it drops a valve, or opens a valve in the regulator, dumps all the excess of fuel back into the fuel cell. But the downside of that is you only get one feed to the engine and nothing coming back from the engine to the fuel cell. So when you're sitting in grid or just sitting there idling, the fuel can get hot, which can cause vapor lock and a whole bunch of other problems if you let it get too hot. I don't think this car would actually be running long enough for it to be relevant, and Corvette's factory are deadheaded fuel systems, so it probably would have been fine, but we're gonna go with the tried and true method just in case. So I think that's about it. I'm gonna order all the dry sump fittings, lines, all the fuel system fittings and stuff like that tomorrow, which basically doesn't put me at a standstill, but puts me out of the interesting stuff until that gets here. So I'm actually gonna close this video out here. We will pick this back up when I get all the dry sump fittings and lines and stuff in, and then we'll do a whole video on dry sump plumbing and fuel system plumbing, and then I'm also gonna do an entire video on nitrous and nitrous plumbing, and then, yeah, I have the electrical video already being filmed, so other than that, that will pretty much wrap up the build series in about 4 more videos, hopefully. Then we'll have one really awesome test video, and then we'll be going straight into round 1.